So when most people think about building a race car, they don't normally think of a Jaguar. It's normally more on the lines of Porsche or BMW. Now in this series, we're going to try and change that. You do flex a lot, So here it is, the Jaguar XK8. Now we built our reputation in the Jaguar Challenge with racing the supercharged car in the saloon. That's what most people recognise us for. So what we've decided to do this year is to build something completely different. So the biggest difference is that it's a GT and not a saloon, and we're also staying well away from the supercharged application, and we're going to stay with a naturally aspirated V8. Now we are in the midst of developing some different modifications for the engine, but we are going to use it as a standard 4.2 to begin with and develop the power throughout the season. So we're going to concentrate pretty much all of our efforts now on the chassis. So the key for us is to make it as light as possible and get the weight where we want it. So we're going to move the driver position to try and achieve that. And we also want as much strength in the shell as possible for chassis dynamics. So that's going to be the key, but let's go back to the start. So the car's now back from paint, and as you've seen earlier, we took it right the way back to metal so that we could stitch a full welded roll cage into the car. Now Nick spent a huge amount of time picking up all the key structural points on the car, so we've gone through the bulkhead into the main strut towers at the front, and we've done the same at the back, and we've also gusseted each joint to make it as strong and safe as possible. We've also put a lot of effort into moving the driver's position back because we're trying to aim for a 55% split. So we've been able to move key bits of metal around the car, cut out what's not needed, and put strength where we need it. So we're next going to move on to the axles, which I'll show you now. So as you can see, we're using standard front and rear XK subframes. Because we're aiming for Class B, there's very little we can actually change on suspension, so we're keeping to the original arms, etc. Andrew from Amitech has had them all Cerakoted for us, all nice and ceramically coated. So we're now just going to start making up some aluminium bushes. We want to solid mount the front and rear axle to the car. We're all going to make some small changes to some of those bushes as well. We've already rebuilt the diff ready, so we've got a brand new rear LSD set up with all the correct ramp angles that we use, and we have changed the gearing slightly, which we do on the crown and pinion. And the same with the rear end, we've got all new bolts, all of the components are ceramic coated, and we're going to solid mount the lower arms, the A-frame, all into the car, and that will tie in with where the roll cage strength points are that have all been stitched in to put it all together. So that's the axles all built now. We've still got to do the front bushes, but we'll do that when we put those in the car, which won't be till next week now. So we're going to move on to the engine. As I said earlier, we are going to use a standard engine, but we are going to strip it down and just refresh it just to make sure it's all okay in standard spec. So we're going to crack on with that now. So with the engine, it's, as I said, it's staying a completely standard spec. So we're stripping it down. We've had the block heads acid dipped, machine face on the block, and also the cylinder head to make sure they're all okay. And then we're just going to rebuild and check all of the bearing tolerances, and we will replace the main bearings, big end bearings, and we'll also just go through and blueprint any of the gaskets, put new valve springs in the top side of the engine, and we'll also replace the piston rings as well. But as I said, it is a completely standard spec. We're going to start there, and then throughout the season we're going to develop and find some power when we need it. So that's the engine all back assembled, ready to go in the car. Next episode we're going to spec up the dampers, fit the front and rear subframes back into the car, and then we're going to look at the braking options, fitting the pedal box and start running some of the lines into the car.